Hello, my fellow modeling and tabletop gaming enthusiasts, and welcome to the Mediocre Modeler Show. This week, we've got a very special painting tutorial for you. It's kind of not wholly historically accurate. It's kind of just something I put together that I liked. So this is sort of my modified approximation of a German World War II ambush, three-tone ambush camo scheme. So this was most often seen later in the war, I think around D-Day in June of 1944, kind of in the Normandy area. But for my bolt action Germans, Conflict 47 Germans, I decided I wanted to do something that was going to challenge me a little bit more. So I decided to do the three-tone scheme. I've done two iterations of it using two different versions of dark yellow, Dunkelgelb. I've got more in my second iteration, which is what you're going to see here. Yeah, you know what? Let's just head on down to the bench and go ahead and get started on this three-tone ambush scheme. So here we go. As previously mentioned, we're going to be using the Trenchworks Martyr 3 as our subject here for how to paint a modified, quote, air quote, modified three-tone ambush scheme. So I've got everything assembled, essentially, into sub-assemblies and primed black with some good old Rust-Oleum 2X black primer. So we've got the mantlet and main gun here glued in, and then we've got the whole hull assembly, the two track halves to the hull. We've got this back plate here, and then this support up here is just blue tacked in, poster tacked in, because I'm going to have to remove that in order to actually mount this into place. In the meantime, I've also done the crew, the two crew figures. This is a separate Trenchworks set that you can buy, because I figure if it's an open top vehicle, it needs to have crew. So they've been done in sort of they're not completely done yet, but you know, the uniforms are pretty well done in kind of, you know, the black tank or tank hunter Panzerjäger uniform. Still need to do the pink on their epaulets, the Waffenfarbe. Pardon my complete and utter lack of knowledge of German pronunciation. These guys just have a few more details to get finished up, and then an oil wash, and they'll be good to go. So the first step on our chassis and everything here in our three-tone scheme is going to be, well, the first step was priming it black. So now I'm going to go in and do a panel highlight using some Army Painter Yeti White. That will be, you know, fairly self-explanatory. We'll come back once we get that done. And then we'll do the normal. We'll do a time lapse of airbrushing our camo colors. And for that, we're going to be using two colors from MIG. So we're going to be using Dunkelgelb, RAL 7028. This is MIG 0011. We're going to be using some Schackelbraun, so RAL 8017, MIG 15, and then we're going to be using some Vallejo refractive green, some 7890. I tried using some of this Rosada green option B in the past. It's a little too green. It's more like Russian or Eastern Bloc post-war green, whereas this refractive green I think turns out a little bit better and looks pretty good. This one is going to be kind of interesting because of this open compartment here. Obviously I want to paint the interior of it. Excuse me. And the interior of, you know, most German vehicles was you know, a fairly light cream-ish color, so that'll be kind of interesting to paint. Not paint, but to mask off. But we'll figure that out. That shouldn't be a huge problem. So I'm going to go ahead, get the panel highlight done on this, and then we'll come back after that. Just take a look at it, and then we'll get started on getting our camo colors on. All right. So we've got our panel highlight done. I've also gone ahead and painted the interior surfaces, just kind of a cream white-ish color. This is going to weather up really nicely with some oil washes, and of course get all the little details painted. Hard part's going to be painting all of these shells inside. You can see we've got all that done. all through there. It's not like full coverage, but I think it's going to be okay, because again, with the weathering, that's just going to help us out. And you're not going to see a lot of it once it's once the gun and the mantlet are in place, as well as the two crew figures. So what I'm going to have to do now is find a way to mask off this whole compartment, as well as the gun and mantlet here. I'm going to try something a little different, because taping this to mask it is going to be a nightmare. So, an old modeler's trick here, we're going to turn to the silly putty. I have had this thing a silly putty for probably 10 years. Basically, I'm just going to shove this cavity full of silly putty. Hopefully not have to use any tape, but we'll see. So basically just going to shove all this in there and see how much we can mask that off to start with our camo. So I'm going to go ahead, take care of that, and we'll come back when it's time to get camo on this tank hunter. It's all masked up now. So we got the interior of the gun mantlet, and the breech and everything of the gun masked off, and then we've got the interior gunner's compartment masked off. It's not perfect. Certainly doesn't have to be perfect. The beauty of it is that weathering can hide a lot of the imperfections. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get this touched up, and then we'll get to painting. So we'll see you guys over at the spray booth. So we're starting here with our Dunkelgelb using a Harder Steenbeck Infinity with a 0.15 needle and nozzle. You're going to see I eventually start to struggle when I get to the brown and the green. Just a lot more overspray, not spraying as cleanly as I expected it should have. But we do our best, just more overspray than I would have expected. So there's not really a pattern to how I'm doing the camo, and I'm just doing it all freehand. Just trying to get fairly close, keeping fairly low-ish pressure and a fine spray pattern. And then just not necessarily trying to get a certain percentage cover, just going where it looks good, making sure we leave spots for the final color here, because we're on to the Shuckle Brown now, Shuckle Braun. And then shortly here, we'll be moving on to the Refractive Green. Now, again, you're going to see me struggle with this quite a bit. Didn't get my paint mix quite right, even though I very thoroughly cleaned this airbrush prior to starting all this. Not the best about cleaning my airbrushes, but it really needed it. It took a surprising amount of time. So after I finish up on the green here, I decided to go back in and touch up some of those Dunkelgelb areas, that dark yellow areas, just to kind of get rid of some of the overspray. It worked well enough, but afterwards I went back and kind of cleaned up some of the brown just to clean up some of the overspray. And then, yep, there we go. This is now where we currently find ourselves. So our three tones have been applied. Again, not perfect. You can see some of the overspray and stuff there, but that's, not a lot I can do about that. I'm not going to fret over it. The barrel dismounted itself from the mantlet, but that's fine. It made for some better painting cleanup. So we need to do one more step on our three-tone pattern. So we've got our tones done, we've got our three colors on, but we need to put on some of those dots that you see. And I have way overdone it on that pattern before. That's why I call this a modified scheme. That is one of the hardest things to do with camo patterns, is maintaining a consistent density, especially when you're doing something like this, adding a bunch of tiny dots, or like with oak leaf camo, again, maintaining that pattern density. This three-tone scheme wasn't used for a particularly long time, so you can just chalk it up to different variations across theaters. It was really only used, used in a couple theaters, but, mainly like post-Normandy or D-Day in Normandy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to do those dots, and we're going to use some more of our Dunkelgelb for most of it, and I'll walk you through how we're going to do it. The other thing we're going to need, I've got this piece of tape here for a reason. I've got a toothpick that I've kind of carved the tip down a little bit with my X-Acto knife, just to make it a little bit more pointy. So we're going to go ahead and get our paint shaken up and get you know, a dollop of paint onto our piece of tape here. And then it's a pretty simple process. Just going to get that pointed end on the paint, make sure we don't have too much, you know, we're making a good sized dot. And then since we're using the yellow, we're going to do it on the green and the brown spaces. So basically just kind of dotting in like that. I'd prefer a little bit more than that, but you do kind of want some size difference, and just kind of put those, you know, and try and make it as random as you can, which is always tough because our brains aren't trained to do that. Definitely want to get some like right on the border between the colors. Definitely kind of helps with that pattern, you know, and just kind of try again. I know it's tough, but you want to try and be as random with this as you can, just to try and help break things up a little bit. You know, if they're perfectly circular, that's fine. I like to kind of carve the tip of the toothpick into more of a flat, but you know, you can also kind of just use the side of the toothpick if you need to, if you want to get some slightly oblong shapes. So, I mean, it's honestly pretty simple, and then definitely between any green and brown that we have touching. I'm probably not going to do it on the wheels because I don't think you generally saw it as much on your running gear as you did on your armor panels. And again, like I said, it's easy to go way overboard with this, and I've done that, but you want to try and be a little bit reserved with your application. But again, we can't say for sure that certain patterns didn't appear in one particular manner. We have a lot of photographic evidence, but we can't say every variation wasn't possible. It's just how things go. You know, get our sides here, everything. I'm just going to do this one green patch, and then we're going to switch to another one, which, now that I think about it, I need to do this brown patch also, because the brown would also be done with the yellow. And this is just kind of my method for doing it. You may find something that works better. It may work better for you to use a brush, so definitely do that if you think a brush is going to work better. These parts along, I'm going to say running boards for lack of a better term, I wouldn't necessarily worry about doing all of those individual little runners, but you can definitely get a few spots on there, and then kind of on this, just this little end piece here. Side skirts probably isn't the correct term either, but you know, it is what it is. I didn't like that. We'll try to clean that one up as best we can. We'll weather that out too, because we haven't done the bulk of our weathering. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we're going to go ahead and then actually, now that I've done that portion, we're going to switch to our other color here. So I need to get my refractive green, and I'm going to get another toothpick prepared, just a secondary one. Normally I would do all one color and then switch, but for the purposes of this tutorial, I want to just get a good example of how to do it with both. So we'll just get a little bit of green here. And then again, we're going to do the same thing. And you can see this toothpick has done a little bit more pointy. Purely unintentional. I didn't intend for it to really be that thin and pointy, but it will still work for our purposes here today. So again, the same thing. We're just going to try and get just a random pattern of green dots onto the yellow. You know, maybe slightly different sizes, because this is coming out a lot smaller than I really would have preferred, to be quite honest. But again, that's fine. We want to make sure that we are kind of getting it in that transition where it's noticeable between the two colors. So honestly, this is probably going to take, well, it did take a while to airbrush this, but you saw all of that in time lapse, so it didn't appear to be that long. But again, we just go for it as best we can. Try to be as random, but at the same time, it's not exactly random. So that, honestly, I think is pretty good. I mean, I'm fairly happy with the density. Again, those transitions I'm just not terribly happy with. But again, we can't say that it was perfect every time, and maybe I should have masked and done it. But, you know, it's not always how it works sometimes. We'll do it on that there. And yeah, I'm happy with that. I don't want to overdo it, so we'll go ahead and call that good. So I'm going to go ahead and get the rest of this dotted on up. And then once that's done, we'll give you a quick glance, and then we'll finish it up with a complete view of the completed tank as always. Well, here we are. So it is all dotted up. I'm willing to bet, not willing to bet, but this is probably way overdone in density wise compared to real historical examples. But, you know, whatever. It's gaming scale. It's for fun. So it's not to try and win contests or anything. It's just to try and put a cool looking model on the table. I'm happy enough with it. I mean, with the dots, I'm happy. With the transitions between colors, I'm not. So if we take a look at a couple of other examples that I've done this on, so we've got a KFZ 222. Again, a Trenchworks model. I did this one quite a while ago. My transitions with the airbrush were much, much smoother. And you can kind of see still some of that Rosada green hidden underneath that I painted over, but you know, looking pretty good. You know, definitely probably similar, if not slightly, you know, more dense on this one. Also another really fun, cool little Trenchworks kit. But I've also got this 3D print of a Camo, which I think this is probably a little bit more closer to the same pattern density. This was a lot of fun to do. This is a solid chunk of 3D resin, though. Let me tell you, this is surprisingly heavy. Heck of a lot of fun to do, though. Just, you know, sometimes it's fun to just paint something like this. So I would say very much in line with that one. And again, you can see my transitions with the airbrush were much nicer. So I need to work on my airbrushing skills, apparently. But then the three of them together, you can kind of see just, again, the green on this one is just a little bit different, but, you know, good enough. And again, there's not really a pattern to it, but yeah, I think it looks pretty good. I think they'll look good, pretty good on the tabletop. I've got one of the Spine Mech walkers and a Panzer IV-X that follow the same pattern, way more dots. And I used like Vallejo dark yellow instead of the Dunkelgelb from MiG, so slightly different pattern, but I'm not gonna bother repainting them at the moment. But yeah, so there we go. I'm gonna go ahead and finish getting this painted, assembled, get the crew in, so we can take a look at it once it's all done. But that, in a nutshell, is how you paint a 3-tone ambush camo scheme. Well, there you have it, folks. There's my historically inaccurate modified 3-tone ambush camo scheme for German vehicles in 28mm. German camo of all varieties is something that always was rather daunting to me. It seemed much harder than I was willing to attempt. Mainly looking at some of the aircraft schemes, like for your Messerschmitts or your Focke-Wulfs. When I was big into aircraft modeling, geez, it's been really 15 years, I think, since, more like 10 or 12 since, you know, I was really in the heyday of it. I didn't do a lot of German aircraft. One, I liked American aircraft more, and the camo schemes were a lot easier because it wasn't really a camo scheme. It was olive drab over neutral gray, or maybe, you know, a 3-tone scheme, which I didn't even do until, you know, 5 years ago for Navy aircraft. But when you kind of break it down into its component parts, especially for armor, I think are a lot easier than aircraft, which can be a little challenging, but it can also be a lot of fun. You just have to kind of play around, take some time to get used to an airbrush, especially for armor. Excuse me, for aircraft, you really an airbrush is a very handy tool. For armor, I mean, you could do it without, but it's a little bit easier to do it with, and I think you can get better results. As you can see, I was struggling with my airbrush a little bit here on this one, and have to work those things out. But you can get a pretty good result with not a whole lot of effort. So, yeah. But that's how I do it. There are a lot of other ways to do it. My scheme, like much of my painting, tends to be very saturated. I'm pretty heavy on the trigger on the airbrush, especially. I don't do a whole lot of, hardly any wet blending ever, but rely on the airbrush for a lot of my blends with things like that. But you'll see a lot of different camo schemes for especially German armor that you have your Dunkelgelb base, but then your accent colors would be much more light. And that is all just a matter of, correctly thinning your paint for that particular application, as well as pressure control and trigger control, air control on your airbrush. But definitely, if you've ever been on the fence about doing it, definitely give it a try. And you'll find that it's not as hard as you think it might be. And not as daunting. I mean, once you've done it once or twice, you realize, okay, this really isn't too bad. This is actually kind of fun. So I would definitely encourage you to give that a try. So thank you very much for watching. If you check the links down below, you'll find a link to the Trenchworks website. You can go pick yourself up your own Martyr 3M, as well as many, many, many other fantastic models that they make. You guys know just how much I do love Trenchworks models. They've got a lot of new stuff out. I think some winter fins and possibly even some Russians coming out in both plastic, metal, or resin, whatever medium you want them in, they're making them in now. I think pretty much print on demand or stuff like that, but definitely go check it out. You can get all kinds of vehicles, just absolutely fantastic stuff, and they're a good group of folk out there. Also, you can find my social media links down below, as well as my Warlord Games affiliate link. We are getting close to the Christmas holiday, so you probably want to be getting your orders in. And as of this moment, when you will see this, the Armies of Germany book is up for pre-order, and there is a special figure that comes with that. I'll probably be pre-ordering that at some point. I'd rather see if I could get a little bit cheaper just buying the book. I don't necessarily need the figure. I don't know if I'd have a great use for it. I mean, cool. It'd be cool to have, but maybe save a few bucks and just get the book. So yeah, so definitely hit that link for my Warlord affiliate link and check out what they've got. As always, I do love Warlord stuff as well. So yeah. So thank you very much for watching. If you feel so inclined, please like, comment, and subscribe. And until next time, folks, may your paints be thin, your brushes be pointy, and your dice be hot.